The moment my phone buzzed that morning, I didn't know it would be the text that ended my family. I was still wearing my paramedic uniform, blood and adrenaline drying on my skin after an all-night emergency shift. The sky over Austin, Texas was turning gold, the kind of sunrise that's supposed to bring peace. But peace was something I hadn't felt in a long time. The message flashed across my cracked screen like a spark before a wildfire. Wire me $200 today. Deposit for the yacht. It was from my younger brother, Evan, the family's golden child, the boy who never worked past noon but somehow always got what he wanted, a yacht for an engagement party. I actually laughed, a dry, humorless sound that scraped out of my chest. Surely it was a joke. I typed back quickly, "No, earn it yourself." I should have stopped there. But 10 minutes later, 2 new messages appeared, one after another. The first was from Mom. "Family helps family. Don't ruin this for him, Harper." The second from Dad. "If you can't support your brother, don't bother coming home for Christmas." My hand froze around the phone, 3 short lines, and suddenly I was 17 again, standing in the kitchen while my parents praised Evan for getting a C in math and told me that straight A's were what's expected. It had always been this way. Evan got their affection. I got responsibility. When I worked nights at a diner to buy my own textbooks, Mom spent hundreds on Evan's new bike. When I asked for help with college, she said, "You'll figure it out, you're strong." And I did. I worked double shifts, earned scholarships, became a paramedic. Every single thing I owned, I earned. But that was never enough for them. For years, I'd been transferring money into a joint family account for essentials, Mom had said. Groceries, bills, gas. I thought I was doing the right thing. I told myself that this was love, that being the dependable one made me a good daughter. But a yacht? That single word tore that illusion to shreds. I tried to focus on my coffee, but my hands were trembling. Then another notification buzzed, a voicemail from Evan. I pressed play, and his voice filled the room, dripping with arrogance. "You're so selfish, Harper. It's just one night. You make more than all of us. Why can't you help your family? You owe us." That word, owe, hit like a knife to the chest. I paused the message halfway. My throat tightened. I'd given them so much. Money, time, peace of mind. And somehow I was still the villain for saying no. Something inside me snapped. I opened my banking app. My heart sank. There it was. $200 transferred out yesterday. I hadn't approved it. Then $900 to a jewelry store. $600 to a luxury vendor. More entries appeared as I scrolled. Fancy restaurants, travel agencies, boutique shops. None of them were mine. The account I'd set up to help with groceries was funding someone else's dream life. My parents' necessities had turned into designer handbags and private events. My stomach twisted. I could almost hear my mother's voice explaining it away. We deserve something nice once in a while. The betrayal didn't come as a scream. It came as silence. Cold, clean, absolute. I called Mom, my voice shaking. "Why are there thousands of dollars missing from the account?" A pause. Then her voice. Calm, controlled, familiar. "Don't be dramatic, sweetheart. It's just money. We're helping Yvonne build a future." I gripped the phone tighter. "With my money? You're single, no kids. You have plenty. You don't understand, Harper. Family supports each other." It was the same script I'd heard my whole life. "You're strong, you'll manage," which really meant we'll take and you'll let us. I hung up. My heart was pounding so loud it drowned out everything else. I walked to the window, staring at the quiet street below. Austin was waking up. I could hear the city's heartbeat, steady and relentless. Mine wasn't. I thought of every Christmas I'd paid for, every emergency I'd covered, every time I'd swallowed my anger because that's what family does. But this time, it was different. Something inside me shifted, something final. The guilt was gone. The fear was gone. All that was left was clarity. I wasn't their daughter anymore. I was their bank account, and I was done. I grabbed my jacket, my keys, and my laptop. The air outside was sharp, biting against my skin, but it cleared my head. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew one thing for sure. This time, I wasn't going to fix their mess, because the truth I was about to uncover would make that morning's betrayal look small. They hadn't just been spending my money. They'd been living off my name. And by the time I found out how deep it went, it was almost too late to stop them. The moment I stepped into the cold morning air, I knew nothing would ever be the same. The Texas sky was too bright, too cheerful for the storm raging inside me. I walked fast, almost running, as if distance could drown out the truth that the people I trusted most might have been living off my name. Every few seconds, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I ignored it. I didn't need to see the words. I already knew the tone. Guilt, manipulation, entitlement. They were fluent in it. By the time I reached the cafe, my hands were shaking. Nadia, my friend, my only anchor, looked up from her laptop as I entered. Her expression changed instantly. She pushed her coffee aside. "Tell me everything," she said. The words tumbled out. The text, the account, the withdrawals. She didn't interrupt once. She just listened, her eyes narrowing as I scrolled through the digital trail of betrayal. When I finished, her fingers started flying over her keyboard. She had that calm intensity I'd always admired, the kind that made liars nervous. She opened a secured banking portal, cross-referenced addresses, dates, merchant codes. Then she looked up, her voice measured, almost too steady. "Harper, do you trust me?" "With my life," I said. "Good," she replied, "because you're about to see something you can't unsee." She turned the screen toward me. There it was, the truth, cold and simple. 2 authorized user cards, issued under my name, mailed to my parents' address. My credit report had been accessed 6 times in the past year, and not by me. Someone had been using my personal information like a mask. "How long?" I asked, my throat dry. 16 months at least, maybe more. My chest tightened. "And the purchases?" She scrolled. "High-end vendors, jewelry stores, private event planners, travel agencies. It's a pattern of luxury spending. And none of it matches your income habits. Whoever did this isn't even trying to hide it." I felt the blood drain from my face. "They didn't even bother to cover their tracks." "Because they didn't think you'd ever look," she said quietly. That line hit me harder than any number on that screen. They hadn't hidden it, because they knew I wouldn't question them. They counted on my trust. Nadia's tone shifted. "Harper, it gets worse. There's a personal line of credit. $50,000. Opened under your name 5 months ago. Payments are being drafted automatically from the joint account." I blinked, disoriented. "No, that can't be." She pulled up the digital signature. My name, my initials, my address. Or rather, theirs. A cold sweat broke across my neck. I pressed my hand against my chest, trying to breathe. "They forged my name." "Yes," she said. "And they're using your credit to pay off other debts. Look, car loans, credit card bills, and even something labeled Bridge Fund Solutions." "What is that?" "A short-term, high-interest lender, the kind people go to when they're desperate." The word desperate clung to the air between us. Nadia hesitated, then added, "This isn't just misuse. It's fraud, Harper. And if they keep it up, you could be held responsible, legally." I froze. Legally. The word echoed in my skull. All my years of being careful, responsible, ethical, gone. Replaced by a criminal record I didn't earn. The cafe noises blurred into white static. I felt dizzy, nauseous, furious. I called my mother, heart hammering, and she answered with that same performative calm. "Mom, did you open a credit line in my name?" A long silence. Then, "What are you talking about?" "Don't lie to me. $50,000, my signature, your address." She laughed, short, nervous, brittle. "You must be mistaken. Maybe a system error." "I have proof, Mom." Her tone hardened. Don't you dare accuse us of theft. After all we've done for you. All you've done to me, I snapped. She hung up. For a second, I sat frozen. Then rage flooded in like a wave breaking through a dam. My hands trembled as I called the bank directly, and Nadia coached me through the words, freeze the account, revoke all external authorizations, close all connected cards. The representative's voice was neutral, professional. Ms. Lane, are you confirming that you no longer authorize the other users on this account? I swallowed hard. Yes, permanently. A pause. Then, understood. The account is now closed. I hung up. The sound of that click was deafening. Freedom doesn't always come with joy. Sometimes it comes with grief. Heavy, suffocating, final. But I wasn't prepared for what came next. Within an hour, my phone began exploding with calls and messages. Mom first. How could you do this? We needed that account. You've left us stranded. Then Dad. We trusted you. We're drowning in bills. You've ruined your family. And then Evan. You think you're some hero? You've destroyed us. I hope you can live with yourself. I didn't respond. My silence was the first power I'd had in years. That night, I barely slept. My apartment felt too small, my mind too loud. I sat on the floor staring at the folder Nadia had given me. Each page was a confession written in numbers. Each charge was a lie wearing my name. There was a receipt from a high-end jeweler, $3,700 for an engagement ring. Another from a travel agency. Couples cruise to Bahamas. I traced the handwriting on the signature line. It looked like mine, but it wasn't. The betrayal burned, but what hurt more was the realization that they hadn't even done it out of need. They'd done it out of greed. Nadia called me the next morning. Harper, you should come in. I found something else. My pulse jumped. What now? She hesitated. Your parents have another account, separate from the joint one. The payments from your forged credit line were being routed there. So they were using my name to pay off their debts. And funding new ones, Nadia said grimly. They took out a second mortgage on their house, $500,000. They've been bleeding cash for years. I felt the room spin. $500,000? Yes. And when they couldn't manage it, they started siphoning from you. I closed my eyes, forcing myself to breathe. A single tear slipped down my cheek, more from fury than sorrow. They knew I'd never question them. They used my kindness like an ATM. Nadia reached across the desk. You have two options, press charges or confront them privately. But whatever you choose, document everything. This isn't over. I left her office just as the sun began to set over the Austin skyline. The city glowed in that golden haze, beautiful, indifferent, alive. And for the first time, I wasn't sure where I belonged. I sat in my car for almost an hour, gripping the steering wheel, replaying every conversation, every moment I'd ignored my instincts in the name of love. My parents' voices echoed in my mind. We're your family. We deserve your help. You're strong enough for all of us. I used to think love meant sacrifice. Now I understood. They'd taught me love meant servitude, and I was done serving. The next morning, I packed a folder full of documents, bank statements, transaction histories, forged signatures, and placed it in the passenger seat. I started the car and whispered to myself, no more secrets. The drive to my parents' house felt endless. Every mile brought a new flash of memory. Evan's smirk when I said no, Mom's soft manipulation, Dad's silent approval. By the time their house came into view, my heart was pounding so loud I could barely hear the engine. The same white suburban house I'd once run through barefoot as a child now looked like a crime scene. I parked at the curb, turned off the ignition, and stared at the front door. The porch light flickered. The blinds were half drawn. It looked ordinary, but I knew the truth hiding inside was anything but. Tomorrow, I thought, everything changes. Because I wasn't coming for forgiveness. I was coming for answers. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid to face them. The morning I decided to face them, the sky was gray. The kind of gray that hangs heavy, as if the world itself knows something's about to break. I didn't eat. I couldn't. My stomach was a knot of nerves and fury. On the passenger seat beside me sat a thick folder. Documents, printed receipts, screenshots, every ugly proof of betrayal. Their house came into view as I turned onto the street where I grew up. The same white two-story home with the oak tree out front and the wind chime that used to lull me to sleep when I was little. But now it looked different, smaller, colder, like the illusion had finally cracked. When I stepped out of the car, I could see silhouettes moving behind the curtains. They knew I was coming. I'd texted them only 2 words: "We need to talk." Mom opened the door before I even knocked. Her makeup was perfect, as if she'd prepared for a performance. Dad stood behind her, silent as always. And Evan, leaning against the banister, arms crossed, that same smugness in his eyes that I used to mistake for charm. The air was thick. No one spoke until I stepped inside. I placed the folder on the coffee table between us. "Let's make this easy," I said quietly. "You all know why I'm here." Mom crossed her arms, her voice brittle. "We don't appreciate being ambushed, Harper." Ambushed? I let out a short laugh. Funny word. I'd call it accountability. Dad shifted uncomfortably, avoiding my eyes. "You've always had a flair for drama." "Not drama," I said. "Truth." I opened the folder. Pages spilled across the table. Bank statements, copies of forged signatures, photos of credit applications. Mom's eyes darted over the papers, then up to me. "What is all this supposed to prove?" she said, her voice rising. "That you used my name," I replied evenly. "My credit, my money, for years." Evan scoffed. "God, you're making it sound criminal." "It is criminal," I said. Silence. For a moment, no one breathed. Then Mom snapped. "You ungrateful child, do you think we wanted this? We were drowning. Your father's job cut his pension, the mortgage ballooned, and we had nowhere to turn. You were the only one stable enough to help." "Help?" My voice trembled with disbelief. "You stole from me." Dad stepped forward, his tone suddenly sharp. "Watch your words." "No," I said louder. "You watch yours, because I have proof of everything. The fake credit line, the cards in my name, the withdrawals you called groceries that went to pay for Evan's engagement cruise." Evan straightened, his voice defensive. "It wasn't my fault. I didn't know she'd use your account." "Don't lie," I said, pointing at him. "You signed the yacht deposit." He froze, his jaw tightening. "Mom said you'd cover it." "And that's the problem," I said, my voice shaking. "You all think my no is just a waiting period until you get what you want." Mom's face twisted. "You're acting like a stranger. We're family, Harper." "Family doesn't commit fraud," I said. "Family doesn't ruin someone's credit or put their job at risk." "You're exaggerating," Dad snapped. "You've always been dramatic. We'll pay you back." "You can't," I said softly. "You're $500,000 in debt. I know about the second mortgage. I know everything." Their faces changed then, the mask finally slipping. Mom's lipstick trembled. Dad's shoulders sagged. Evan's eyes darted between us like a cornered child. "How could you dig into our finances?" Mom hissed. "That's private." "Private," I repeated. "You opened loans under my name. You forged my signature. You turned my life into your collateral. Privacy left the room the moment you used my social security number." Tears welled in her eyes, but I felt nothing. I'd cried enough for them already. Dad exhaled shakily. "We never meant for it to go this far. We thought—" "You thought I'd never notice," I finished. "That I'd keep working myself to exhaustion and never question why my balance never grew." Mom pressed her hand to her chest. "You don't understand. We were trying to protect Evan's future." At that, something in me broke. The last thin thread of sympathy I'd been holding on to. "Protect him? By destroying mine?" I said. He's a grown man. You've been protecting him his whole life. When does he start protecting himself? Evan glared at me. You've always been jealous. Admit it. You hate that Mom and Dad love me more. For a split second, the words hit like a blade, but then I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was so painfully, stupidly true. Maybe I was jealous once, I said, when I was 16 and you were the miracle child who could do no wrong. But jealousy fades when you grow up and realize love built on debt and guilt isn't love at all. Mom stepped forward, tears streaking her cheeks. You don't mean that. I do, I said, and for once I mean it for me. I gathered the documents back into the folder, my hands trembling. I'm filing a fraud report. The bank already froze the accounts. I gave you a chance to tell me the truth. You lied again. Dad's voice hardened. You'd destroy your own parents? Your brother? You destroyed yourselves, I said. I'm just walking away from the wreckage. Evan slammed his hand against the wall. You can't do this. You're ruining us. I'm saving myself, I said quietly. Something you should all try sometime. Mom sank onto the couch, sobbing. We're your family. You can't just leave us like this. I took a slow breath, fighting the burn behind my eyes. You left me first, every time you lied, every time you used me, every time you made me feel like love was a transaction. No one spoke after that. The only sound was the faint ticking of the living room clock, the same one that used to lull me to sleep when I was a child. I turned to leave, but Dad's voice stopped me. You'll regret this, Harper, he said. Family is all you have. I looked back at them one last time. My mother's tear-streaked face, my father's anger, my brother's defiance, and for the first time in my life, I felt nothing but peace. No, I said. Family isn't what you have. It's what you choose to keep. Then I walked out. Outside, the air was cold but freeing. The wind cut through my jacket, sharp and cleansing, like it was stripping away the years of guilt and manipulation clinging to my skin. Behind me, I could hear shouting, my mother crying, my brother pacing, my father's voice breaking into something that almost sounded like regret. But I didn't turn back. Halfway down the driveway, I stopped and looked up at the oak tree, the same tree I used to climb when I was a little girl. The same one where my father had once tied a tire swing, where my mother had taken pictures of Evan in his birthday hat. It used to mean home. Now it was just wood and rope. My hands were shaking as I unlocked my car, but it wasn't fear anymore. It was adrenaline, the rush that comes after survival. Before driving off, I glanced in the rearview mirror. My mother had come outside. She stood in the doorway, barefoot, mascara streaked, her hand gripping the frame. For a second, I almost felt sorry for her, but then I remembered the folder beside me. The signatures, the numbers, the proof. Sympathy died where truth began. I started the engine. The sun was setting behind the roofs, painting everything in gold, that cruelly beautiful hour between endings and beginnings. As I drove away, I whispered the words I'd been too afraid to say for years. I forgive you, but I'll never go back. The words hung in the air, soft but steady. And as the road stretched out before me, I realized forgiveness didn't mean letting them in again. It meant letting myself go free. When I drove away from my parents' house that evening, I didn't look back. The last thing I saw in the rearview mirror was the oak tree, swaying gently in the wind. For years, that tree had been my symbol of home. Steady, familiar, rooted. But that night, it looked like something else entirely. A witness, silent, still, watching me finally walk away. The drive back to Austin felt longer than usual. The city lights blurred in my eyes, but I wasn't crying. I'd spent too many years doing that already. What I felt now wasn't sadness. It was stillness. The kind that comes after a storm, when everything inside you has been ripped apart and what's left is simply quiet. When I finally pulled into my driveway, I sat there for a long time, gripping the steering wheel. I didn't even get out right away. I just breathed, For the first time in months, maybe years, I realized something simple and terrifying. I was free. Free from their expectations. Free from the guilt that had ruled my life. Free from the belief that love had to hurt. But freedom has a cost. It's not a warm, glorious feeling. It's cold at first, like stepping out of a burning house barefoot, knowing you'll never walk back in. That night, I didn't sleep. I wandered around my tiny apartment, touching the walls, the counter, the photos I'd taken on my own. Little moments that were mine. It wasn't much, but it was honest, and I realized that was enough. The following weeks felt like a slow rebirth. I met with Nadia almost every day, sorting through paperwork, finalizing fraud reports, rebuilding my credit. The bank investigated, confirmed everything, and eventually cleared my record. It took time, hours of forms, calls, signatures, but piece by piece, I reclaimed what they'd stolen. Nadia smiled at me one afternoon as she handed me a folder. "Your financial slate is clean," she said. "You're officially free." Free. That word again. It was starting to feel real, but healing wasn't just about numbers. It was emotional, messy. There were nights I missed them, not the people they were, but the idea of them, the illusion that family meant unconditional love. Sometimes I'd pick up my phone, scroll through old texts, and hover over the call button. But then I'd remember my mother's voice saying, "You owe us." And I'd put the phone down because I didn't owe anyone anything. Not anymore. 3 months passed before I heard from anyone again. It was a message from my cousin, Laura, the only one in the family who'd ever treated me like a person instead of a resource. She texted me late one night. "Harper, I think you should know. Your parents filed for bankruptcy. The house is gone." I stared at the screen for a long time. My hands didn't shake. I didn't cry. All I felt was a deep, heavy sadness. Not for the loss, but for what they'd chosen instead of love. Laura sent another message. "They're staying in a rental now. Evan's moved back in with them. He's working part-time at a furniture store." I read it twice. Evan, the golden boy, the one who'd once told me I'd regret saying no, now folding tables for a paycheck. Life has a way of humbling people. That night, I sat on my balcony with a blanket around my shoulders, looking out at the quiet Austin skyline. I wasn't proud of what had happened to them, but I also didn't feel guilty. Not anymore. Everyone has a choice. They made theirs, and I had finally made mine. A few weeks later, something unexpected happened. I got a letter, handwritten, the kind nobody sends anymore. No return address, but I recognized the handwriting instantly. It was from my mother. I hesitated for a long time before opening it. Inside were 3 pages, tear-stained, shaky, full of words she'd never said aloud. "Harper, I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even know if I deserve to ask. We made terrible mistakes. We thought we could control everything. Our image, our comfort, our failures. We used you because we were ashamed to face our own. You were right. Love shouldn't come with a price tag. Your father barely speaks these days. He says you were always the strong one. And maybe that's why we leaned on you so much. Too much. I know we broke something that can't be fixed easily, but if one day you can stand to see us again, I'll be here. Mom." I read it 3 times before folding it back carefully. No excuses, no denial, just raw, human regret. For the first time, I let myself cry. Not for the past, but for the tiny flickering hope that maybe they were finally learning. I didn't respond right away. I wasn't ready. Forgiveness takes time. And boundaries. But that night, I lit a candle, whispered a small prayer for them, and set the letter beside it. Not as a bridge back. Just as a reminder that even broken things can stop bleeding if you stop reopening the wound. The months that followed were quiet, almost peaceful. I threw myself into work, real work that mattered, saving lives, helping strangers, finding purpose in the moments that reminded me why I'd chosen this path in the first place. When you spend your life rescuing others, you forget that sometimes you need saving too. One evening, as I was finishing a late shift, a young girl approached me in the ER waiting room. She was maybe 19, shaking, holding a phone to her chest. She whispered, "My mom keeps asking for money I don't have. I don't know what to do." Her eyes were the same kind of tired mine had been months ago. I sat down beside her. "Let me tell you something," I said. "Saying no doesn't make you heartless. It makes you human. You can love people without losing yourself." She nodded, tears filling her eyes, and in that moment I realized healing isn't just about closure. It's about turning your pain into something someone else can hold on to. By December, almost a year had passed since the confrontation. Austin was dressed in lights and music, Christmas markets filling the streets. Everywhere I looked, families were laughing together, arms full of gifts. For the first time, I didn't feel envy. I felt peace. I spent Christmas Eve alone that year, by choice. I cooked pasta, poured wine, and played soft music. No expectations, no guilt, no drama, just quiet gratitude. Around midnight, I went for a walk. The air was crisp, the city humming softly. As I crossed a bridge over the river, I stopped halfway and looked down at my reflection in the dark water. The woman staring back wasn't the same Harper who once begged for her family's approval. She was steadier, softer, stronger. I whispered, "You made it." And for the first time, I believed it. A few months later, life surprised me again. I ran into Evan. It was at a grocery store on a random Sunday afternoon. I almost didn't recognize him. Hair shorter, eyes tired, no designer clothes in sight. He froze when he saw me. "Harper," he said quietly. I nodded. "Hey." For a moment, neither of us knew what to say. Then he looked down, voice breaking. "I'm sorry." It wasn't rehearsed. It wasn't dramatic. It was real. He told me he'd gotten a steady job, that he was paying his own bills now, that he finally understood what I'd been trying to teach him. That hard work wasn't punishment. It was freedom. When he finished, I smiled, small but genuine. "I'm proud of you," I said, and I meant it. He looked up, eyes wet. "Do you think Mom would ever forgive me?" I paused. "You'll have to earn that, the same way I had to earn myself back." He nodded slowly, and we parted ways. As I walked out into the sunlight, something lifted from my chest. Forgiveness, I realized, isn't about letting people back in. It's about letting yourself move on. Today, when I think about my family, it doesn't hurt the way it used to. There's still sadness, yes, but there's also understanding. They were flawed, frightened people who made terrible choices. But I was no longer their victim. I was my own person. And that, to me, was the real victory. If you've ever been in my place, giving too much, loving too hard, being told your worth is measured by what you can provide, I want you to hear this. You don't owe anyone your peace. You don't owe anyone your savings, your sanity, or your silence. You owe yourself a life that feels like yours. Set boundaries, speak truth, choose yourself, even if it means walking away, because sometimes the hardest goodbyes lead to the gentlest beginnings. I used to think I lost everything when I lost my family, but now, standing here at the end of it all, I realize I didn't lose them. I found me, and that's the best ending I could have ever asked for.